So I just want to remind all of you that we are going to be using Slido for this next session. And if you need the code, it's D2020. So please join in, because I think it's going to be a very interesting conversation. So next, I'd like to bring up to the stage Nick Brien. And for those of you who don't know Nick, he is a longtime industry leader at both creative agencies, media agencies, where I had the pleasure of working with him. He's also been on the media company side. And he's currently the CEO of the Americas for Dentsu Aegis Network. And I'm excited to bring Nick up because he's going to be a burst of energy in this room. And he's going to share with you some of the danger zones we need to look out for in the industry and what we need to look for in the years ahead. He's also then going to moderate a panel of industry leaders, and it's a real rare opportunity for us to get some candid views into what some of the top leaders are thinking about today. And we're also going to take questions. So I'm very excited to welcome to the stage Nick Brien, who's taking a last-minute note right before he comes up, because that brain is always working. Please join me in welcoming Nick Brien.
Hello, 4A's. Yes, we're in another casino. Makes me realize when I listen to that last great panel when we talk about the political situation, how we all live in a world of unintended consequences. And I wonder whether we often reflect enough about how our money and our marketing dollars shape a landscape, an ecosystem that we know is having such a significant effect on our political system. So I'm not going to talk about that because I've got a panel. We're going to actually host a panel and have some significant conversation about what are the things we can do. Because if you think the political situation is a bit of a mess, I have a strong point of view that our own industry is in a bit of a mess. So when I think about the title, I actually happened to have a conversation with Suzanne Venezia. Where's Suzanne from the Wall Street Journal? Suzanne's there. And I said to her, and I was giving her some thought, she said, actually, if you're going to bother coming down an industry point of view, we should be talking about the hard truth. So I changed the title. We're not going to be talking about new rules for a new world. I'm going to set up my perspective so we can have a meaningful conversation from a couple of points of view. The marketeer perspective, the consumer perspective, a publisher perspective, which was interesting in my mind. Are we talking about publishers? Are we talking about media companies? Are we talking about tech companies? It's hard because they're kind of all in there as well. And then the agency perspective. So no further ado, let me just give you this is again, my perspective that we're going to have a panel and a conversation. This is a lot of what you know. So I'm going to go fast because you're all senior executives in the industry across the landscape. So I know you're going to have a perspective on your own perspective. What's interesting is, regardless of the political situation, for the last 9 years, the US has had such remarkable economic stability and success. And yet, at the same time, 50% of the Fortune 500 companies have had profits that have been in decline. Why is that? A lot of that is about the fact we've all done our different surveys, and that was a quote I got when I went to the ANA, Masters in Marketing Conference. At the Dentsu Aegis Network, we did a global study about the complexity in the marketing system. 56% of the CMOs we interviewed said too much competition. 46% said there was a growing intolerance of advertising. 44% dealt with the information overload. Who here went to the ANA? Who went to the ANA Masters in Marketing? Hands up. Right. The sentiment we got there, and this was our first speaker. And a lot of the sentiment, there was a lot of different sentiments there, but I didn't really get a sentiment that was a kind of real universal positivity about us, agency, media owner, publisher sector. And I'm going to talk about us together, because this is a collective point of view. What I did hear about was the insourcing, and again, the mentality towards how can we bring marketing services and capabilities in-house? And is it just about cost? No, it's about speed, it's about delivery. Some was content, some was programmatic. Everyone looks at their own flavor, but ultimately, it was a very strong trend being pioneered and championed. And actually, when you looked at someone like the Forrester research that came out, I mean, Mark Pritchard was one of the ones that talked about the days of agency networks with hundreds of agency brands are over. We're now looking for those agency networks, fewer agencies who can help us succeed. A recent survey came out, 60% of brands want to reduce their numbers of agencies. And again, this is what you read yourself, and ultimately then this says, where do you want to spend the money? We know that CMOs are having to spend more money when it comes to data, technology, MarTech, AdTech, integration, and making sure that the technological and data ecosystem really works them very well. Again, this is stuff that you know. What are the hard truths from the client perspective? Again, this is my point of view, and we're going to talk about it as a panel. I think number one, they're looking for lower costs and less complexity. We know that a lot of the structures that they're dealing with in agency world aren't ones that are aligned against this more agile and responsive way of working. They want more accountability. They need it. I talked to Bob Leadys. He was the one that said to me, if his CMO within the A&A community and they're not demonstrating the kind of performance on the money they're spending, they're out of a job very quickly. And that's why the focus is on growth. Brand safety, not just on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I mean, the notion that these brands have been built with billions of dollars, so much time, they're precious, they're fragile, and they're in an environment that isn't safe because you are associated by the friends you keep. You are associated by the places you show up. Omnichannel content. A lot of it, we know we're living in a world now where it is omnichannel. How do you tell a story a million different ways? How are we being really smart about content that's dynamic, that's fluid, and is highly relevant and responsive? And this is something I'm going to talk about when I talk about our partners as media owners, publishers, and technology companies, because we can all do this better. Talent diversity. How are we going to get the kind of creativity and the fresh thinking if we have not got the diversity? How many of our agencies does the inside look like the outside? Transformational ideas. I welcome the fact that we're going to be talking about the power of ideas. Maybe not enough at this conference, because a lot of this is about media and data and tech and technology. I'm still a firm believer that the power of a transformational idea is what will really create brand power. Media transparency. From the marketeer point of view, we're going to talk about this. And again, these are my perspectives. What do you think? I feel this is an area that is still subject to too much frustration. And what does it boil down to from a marketing point of view? Trust. Is there enough trust in the system? Is there enough trust of the agencies? Is there enough trust of not just our professionalism, of our judgment, of our execution, but the way we are doing business? What about from a consumer perspective? Because for too often, I think a lot of it is about the brand mentality. I have a very aggressive and progressive point of view about what I believe to be the consumer situation. Because I believe there's been a fundamental shift in the balance of power. I grew up and it was very much, it was in a consumer, in a brand-driven world. It was, we will change consumer behavior. We had the arrogance, and you know why? That was marketing success. And I believe it has shifted now, and we are now in a consumer-led world. Why do I say that? Because you know what? You see these kind of studies coming out all the time. We're living in the age of the empowered consumer. McKinsey did this great study. You should read it if you haven't seen it. It came out 2 years ago. 10 years ago, 2/3 of the most influential contacts and channels to have great impact for brands were the ones you bought. They were ones we controlled. They were advertising. They were marketing, point of sale, all the various channels. Now we've got a world 10 years later, 2/3 of the most influential contacts, search, third parties, social, reviews, blogs. Technically, many of the channels in the form of communication and engagement that aren't controlled by the marketeer. So this is a fundamental shift. It's a fundamental shift because consumers are increasingly curating their own journeys. And we know that at the same time, consumers expect more from brands. This was an Edelman survey that came out globally only a year ago. 71%, they expect brands to inspire me. 65% expect brands to support my life and my ambitions. 78% expect me to bring about a brand to bring about some element of social change. 66% expect a brand to demonstrate their commitment to sustainability. Our challenge, collectively, and when I talk about this, again, I'm not talking about us as agency sector or media owner sector or tech company. I'm talking about us collectively. How do we live up to the greater expectations of consumers? Salesforce came out with their own survey recently. talking about the fact it isn't the product or the service, it's about the experience. 79% said experiences. So what a brand does, how we behave. You'll know this person. I'll show you in a sec. This is a mentality, and he's going to represent, I'm going to share another example where I believe we've got a shift from saying we're not just selling. And I'm not just, how do you just not market at me as a transactional buyer of goods and services? How do you start to matter? How do you start to matter to me as a person? So the thought is here how we stop marketing in the traditional sense of the word, French word, marcher, to sell. We're not just about selling, we're in the engagement business. You all know him. He's so rich he can wear shades like that every day. 55 years ago, he started selling shoes out of the back of his car trunk in Portland, Oregon. 35 years ago, they created Just Do It. And on the 35th anniversary, he was presented with an idea, his relationship with his star, LeBron James, and if you read his speech, if you read Phil Knight's speech about his Stanford address, why he supported the campaign and the ad I'm going to show you when he knew it was going to split society was because he said in the top 100 things that I have to worry about, not one of them is the fact that my grandchild is going to get shot because of the color of his skin. And so he overrode the CEO of Nike and he approved this campaign.
If people say your dreams are crazy, if they laugh at what you think you can do, good. Stay that way. Because what non-believers fail to understand is that calling a dream crazy is not an insult. It's a compliment. Don't try to be the fastest runner in your school or the fastest in the world. Be the fastest ever. Don't picture yourself wearing OBJ's jersey. Picture OBJ wearing yours. Don't settle for homecoming queen or linebacker. Do both. Lose 120 pounds and become an Ironman after beating a brain tumor. Don't believe you have to be like anybody to be somebody. If you're born a refugee, don't let it stop you from playing soccer for the national team at age 16. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. When they talk about the greatest team in the history of the sport, make sure it's your team. If you have only one hand, don't just watch football, play it at the highest level. And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
So bold. And what happened? Sure enough, we got the expected backlash. You saw what happened. The country was split apart. People were ripping up their Nike outfits, and guess what happened? It took a while, and now the stock is up 35% since September 25, and sales went up 42%. It worked. So I have a very strong point of view that winning brands matter, that we have to evolve marketing to mattering. Because ultimately, when I think about the hard truths, when I use Suzanne's language, and I was thinking more from their point of view, they are looking for making sure that they do have those engaging experiences. That they really are digital experiences, the intelligence of digital. Don't just keep spamming me and spamming me. Use the knowledge, use my data. I know you have the data. I know you understand my channels. Use it smartly, not just to target me, but understand what I want and give me some anticipation. How do we ensure that the transactions are seamless? More and more work is going on in this regard, but they expect that. They also increasingly expect assistive intimacy, the personalization, but assist me as a brand. I believe that they want valuable customer experience. And I believe that loyalty should not be confused with inertia. I believe that they need a secure data exchange. I do believe that people aren't as concerned so much as yet in the US about privacy as they are in other parts of the world until their data is hacked and they have lost their digital identity and then their lives become very painful. Anyone that's happened to in this room knows exactly what I'm talking about. And that is growing day by day. And ultimately, I do believe that more and more, certainly of a younger generation, but generations in general all over the world are starting to understand. So really, what do they want? I believe that they're looking for respect. They expect brands to understand them, respect them, and engage with them on the terms of the way they want to live their lives. What about publisher? It's a hard one to use. Is it media owner? Is it publisher? Is it tech company? No, the tech company is not going to be a media owner because then it takes responsibility for the content on its platform. It's a very difficult one. But either way, there's a lot of opportunity for tech companies, media owners, publishers, all to be working together in a different respect. Because you all know this, you're the experts. It's a media conference. You know that the habits are changing. You know that we're in a situation now that I would regard as a golden age of television. It's awesome. Everyone's streaming. It's a beautiful thing. The irony was, the latest results, when we look at Reed Hastings talking about Netflix and their success, you know what worries him more than anything else? Fortnite. 250 million gamers now in increasingly a gaming social platform that is yet to be fully exploited by the brands with relevance and engagement, but it's happening very fast. So what is that doing? It's triggering other developments that we know. The big deals are moving ahead. We're going to see more of them. I'm convinced of that. But what does it really mean for us? I think it means that you've got still a very strong digital duopoly and the strength of those partners. And is it enough? Are we all doing enough? I would challenge it from a media and a publisher point of view because they are so strong. Why? Because they have scale, persistence, first-party data, programmatic tech, and increasingly they are working so hard to resolve the safety of their environments, which gets harder and harder and harder and harder. And we know why. And we know that regulation and legislation needs to be updated. It needs to be more introduced. It's happening all over the world because we're seeing the effects. And it's not just political. We're talking about cultural. We're talking about dynamic. We're talking in so many different ways that there is so much that is living under the auspices of unintended consequences. And I think we need to regulate. So what are those hard truths? My perspective here that we're going to talk about it. I don't care. Whether Casey talked about it's not fake news, it's false news. Whether it's false news or hate news or bad news, we know that there is an open source about the way this goes on. We know that there's so much opportunity. I'm not even talking about the New Zealand travesty and the live broadcasting, but the notion is that the algorithms have to get smarter because we can play whack-a-mole and be bringing down as much content as we want, and you can have human moderators, and because users are publishing it, it never stops. So how smart are the algorithms to make sure that we don't just continue to serve up to people what they've been used to consuming? How are we using them? Because we know in this room, anything we don't like that comes into our life, we delete, we hit delete. Hitting delete is not enough. There needs to be greater regulation. There needs to be greater agency partnership. Many of us in this room, we watch the way we kind of maneuver around it. I don't believe that when I go back to the initial client and marketeer concern about the true impact of the money they're spending to drive their economic growth and their brand power, is necessarily served by an increasing fragmentation in the media owner, agency, and tech company landscape. I believe that we need to work with the media owners and the tech companies to create more tech-connected experiences. The resources are there. It's not always helped by walled gardens, but we need to understand that the brands are looking to do one thing. They're looking to turn suspects into prospects, into buyers, into advocates. And they want to do that as tightly, as swiftly as they can. And what we all need to be working is to eliminate all the money we're spending on suspecting and go right to prospecting. I think the data leverage can be so much better if people are really open to sharing and making sure that what we create and what we deliver is addressable, is relevant, is dynamic, and all the data sets are there, but we've still got too many walls between us about what data we're going to really collaborate and mix in together. I believe, after my 3 years working within the Hearst organization, that so many of the media owners have some of the most powerful resources in the world. They have content and data. And more than anything, whether it's a tech company, a publisher, or a media company, they really understand their platforms. They really understand their platforms, and they really understand their communities. So is the mentality of co-creation as powerful as it can be? Are we really on that bandwagon? I believe that for the media companies and the tech companies and the publishers, the spirit of partnership needs to be higher. What about agencies? I've saved the best till last because we're going to talk about this more. From an agency point of view, there's a lot of different players in the agency and marketing services landscape. You know this. You can see all your own logos, and really what's happening is it's all converging. It's all converging. And it should be converging because we're in a digital landscape where you have the opportunity to use experiences to pull it together. I thought when I met Satya Nadella, we worked with him on his global media with Microsoft. He had this great quote. Our industry does not respect tradition. What it respects is innovation. Innovation. We can't be standing still and doing things better. Are we doing things right? Are we doing things better? Or are we doing things differently? So I believe we've all got to step up as an agency sector. And I'm talking about agency or anyone providing marketing services. Are we thinking enough about innovating the way brands are built? Are we thinking enough about innovating the way that brands are shared? Or innovating the way that brands are bought and sold? Or innovating the way that brands are experienced? The hard truths from the agency point of view. And this is what we're going to talk about as a panel now, and I hope we can align on some of the things that we can unite on and work on collectively as opposed to competing with one another and leaving them fall by the wayside. Number one, I have a point of view from an industry perspective that we are too passive. I believe that our professional standards in the demand generation side of the business is amazing. I mean, I see my friends and my brother, they work at the consultants, so they're coming out and they've sorted out HR and global sourcing and supply chain management. And they're leaving the supply side and they're coming into the demand side. That's our side of the business. Imagine what I said to my brother. We are slow to change. We're too incremental. We have legacy structures, and with that comes legacy mentalities and legacy behaviors and legacy relationships and legacy P&Ls. We have output-focused, CPM, CPA, reach, frequency. What are the marketing outputs, and how are we really closing that gap between the marketing outputs and the business outcomes? Because what General Motors want is for us to drive qualified leads into the dealership. What ABI want is they want higher sales for Bud. We have an inefficient value proposition. I don't believe our sector, and again, Marla, we've had the conversation. Where's Marla? I wish she was here to hear this. We're fragmented. We're going to talk now about what we align against, because we cannot be fragmented. We cannot be fragmented. We can be competitive, but we can't be fragmented. We need to create greater alignment in this regard. And when I think about the last but not least, we are not creatively obsessed. And I'm talking about creative obsession, not just in the ad or in the story or in the content. I'm talking about the creativity of the loyalty program. I'm talking about the creativity of the design. I'm talking about creative obsession. It's why Steve Jobs had a marketing meeting at 8 a.m. every Wednesday morning, and every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. he looked at everything that Apple was doing. Product design, store opening, the latest ad campaign, a PR release. It was all a touch point and an opportunity for the brand to create a personal, engaging, delightful experience with their customers. So I think the hard truth for our agency sector is our professional standards are not being championed at the highest level and are not being driven based on the value we create. We are on the demand creation side. We are on the ability to create this remarkable relationship with what people have with the brand and that loyalty and the power. You know how many balance sheets are strengthened by brand valuation. There's enough clients in this room who live and die with it every day. And it isn't just on the product and service. Our job, I believe, as a sector is to help our clients win, keep, and grow their best customers. It's not just about customer acquisition. It's not just about CRM and loyalty. It's not just about turning that loyalty into advocacy and growth through promotions. It's how we do that and we get that loop. And when we do that really well, we are going to drive economic growth. And we're going to help also reinforce all those brands that we work with that they increasingly need a social purpose. That they need some purpose, whether it be diversity, whether it be sustainability, whether it be supply chain. What are the circumstances they need to do both? And now we're going to have a panel, and we're going to talk about a few things.